The morning sun cast long shadows across the scrapyards of Kepler 442, a forgotten mining station that orbited a dying star on the edge of known space. Dae-ho Kim wiped the grease from his hands as he surveyed the latest haul of salvage his automated drones had collected. Beside him, his German Shepherd mix buddy sniffed at a piece of twisted metal, tail wagging with the eternal optimism that only dogs possessed. "What do you think, boy? Anything worth fixing in this mess?" Dae-ho scratched behind Buddy's ears, earning a happy bark in response. At 34, Dae-ho had spent the better part of a decade running Kim's repair shop, a modest operation that had somehow earned a reputation across 3-star systems. Traders, miners, even the occasional military vessel would detour to Kepler 442 when they needed something fixed that others had deemed impossible. Dae-ho had a gift, an intuitive understanding of how things worked that went beyond mere technical knowledge. The proximity alarm chimed softly in his workshop. Dae-ho glanced at the scanner display and frowned. A massive energy signature was approaching fast, but it wasn't following any standard approach vector. Whatever it was falling. "Crash landing," he muttered, grabbing his emergency kit and signaling Buddy to follow. "Come on, boy. Looks like we've got work to do." The impact site was a 12-minute ride across the station's surface in his maintenance hoverbike. What Dae-ho found there made him question his own sanity. The crashed vessel wasn't like anything in the known ship registries. It was organic-looking, with flowing lines that seemed to pulse even in its broken state. The hull appeared to be some kind of biomechanical composite that shifted between metallic and almost flesh-like textures. Buddy whined softly, pressing close to Dae-ho's leg. The dog's instincts were usually spot on about danger, but this wasn't his usual warning behavior. This was something else, concern, maybe even sympathy. "Easy, boy. Let's take a look." As they approached the breach in the ship's hull, Dae-ho heard it, a sound that was part mechanical whir, part labored breathing. Inside the wreckage, trapped beneath what looked like a collapsed biosupport system, was a creature unlike anything Dae-ho had ever seen. It was massive, easily 3 meters long, with scales that shimmered between deep emerald and burnished gold. Its head was distinctly draconic, with intelligent eyes that held depths of ancient wisdom and current pain. Biomechanical implants were seamlessly integrated along its spine and limbs, but many were sparking or had gone dark entirely. The creature's eyes focused on Dae-ho with considerable effort. When it spoke, its voice was like distant thunder, speaking in heavily accented galactic common. "Human, you should not be here. Dangerous." Dae-ho stepped closer, his mechanic's eye already assessing the damage to the biomechanical systems. "I'm Dae-ho Kim. This is Buddy. We're here to help." "Help?" The creature's laugh was bitter. "I am Veltar, last of the Draconian warriors. My people are gone. My ship is dying. Soon, I will join them." Buddy approached the fallen warrior slowly, his tail giving tentative wags. Something in the dog's demeanor seemed to calm Veltar, and the great creature's breathing became slightly less labored. "Your companion has a pure heart," Veltar observed. "It has been long since I felt such uncomplicated kindness." Dae-ho knelt beside the trapped warrior, studying the biomechanical interfaces. They were unlike anything he'd seen, but somehow familiar. His hands moved instinctively toward a cluster of failing nodes. "Don't," Veltar warned. "The biotech, it will not respond to your kind. Only Draconians can—" But as Dae-ho's fingers touched the interface, something extraordinary happened. The dormant systems flickered to life, responding to his touch with a warm, almost eager pulse. Veltar's eyes widened in disbelief. "Impossible," the warrior breathed. What are you?" Dae-ho was wondering the same thing. The biomechanical system felt as natural to work with as any engine or computer he'd ever repaired. More than that, it felt right, like coming home after a long journey. "I'm just a mechanic," Dae-ho said, his hands working to stabilize the failing life support systems. "But I think I can help you." As the emergency repairs took hold and Veltar's condition stabilized, the warrior's eyes took on an urgent intensity. Human, Deho, listen carefully. An ancient evil stirs in the void between stars. The void swarm. It returns. Without the draconian warriors to stand guard, entire civilizations will be consumed. But your touch awakens our technology. This cannot be coincidence. Veltar struggled to raise his great head, his gaze piercing. My scanners detect something in your genetic pattern, something that should not exist. Tell me, human, what do you know of your species' true origin? Deho exchanged a glance with Buddy, who had settled protectively near Veltar's head. I guess I'm about to learn. Dr. Jiwan Park had seen many impossible things during her 15 years as head medic on Kepler 442, but nothing had prepared her for Deho dragging a 3-meter dragon into her clinic. Have you completely lost your mind? She demanded, even as her professional instincts kicked in, and she began running bioscans on the massive creature stretched across her emergency bay. Probably, Deho admitted, helping to position Veltar more comfortably. But Jiwan, look at these readings. This isn't just some unknown alien species. The biomechanical integration is beyond anything we've encountered. Jiwan had known Deho since they were children, back when Kepler 442 was still a thriving mining colony instead of a forgotten outpost. She'd learned to trust his instincts about complicated systems, but this was pushing even her faith in his judgment. The medical scanners painted an incredible picture. Veltar's physiology was a perfect fusion of organic tissue and advanced technology. His scales weren't just armor. They were living solar collectors and data processors. His spine contained what appeared to be a quantum computing matrix that interfaced directly with his nervous system. Fascinating, Jiwan murmured, her scientific curiosity overriding her initial shock. The integration is so seamless. How is such a thing possible? Our species evolved alongside our technology, Veltar explained, his condition much improved thanks to Deho's emergency repairs. For millennia, Draconians served as guardians of the galaxy. We were warriors, yes, but also healers, builders, protectors. Our biotechnology allowed us to adapt to any environment, to understand and work with any form of life. Buddy had claimed a spot near Veltar's great head, occasionally offering gentle licks that seemed to soothe the ancient warrior. It was an odd sight, the small earth dog comforting a creature from legend. What happened to your people? Jiwan asked, continuing her scans while Deho worked on repairing more of the biomechanical interfaces. Veltar's eyes dimmed with old pain. A plague. Not biological, something far worse. It infected our biotechnology itself, turning our greatest strength into a weapon against us. One by one, my people fell. I am the last, and even now the infection works within my systems. Deho's hand stilled on the interface he was repairing. This plague. Is that what you called the void swarm? No. Veltar's voice carried a weight of terrible knowledge. The plague was merely the beginning. The void swarm is what the plague became, a conscious malevolence that devours entire star systems. It consumed our homeworld first, then spread outward, seeking more biotechnology to corrupt and consume. Jiwan's scanner beeped with an anomalous reading. Deho, look at this. Your DNA is resonating with some kind of harmonic frequency when you touch those interfaces. She pulled up a comparison chart that made all three of them stare in wonder. There's a genetic marker in your DNA that matches something in the Draconian database. It's incredibly faint, but it's there. Veltar struggled to sit up, his great eyes fixed on Deho with new understanding. The bonded ones. It was legend, even among my people. Long ago, before we became purely Draconian, there was another species that worked alongside us. They called themselves the Architects. The stories said they could touch our biotechnology as if it were their own. You think humans are descended from these architects? Deho asked. Perhaps. Or perhaps humanity carries some fragment of their genetic legacy. Veltar's biomechanical systems pulsed brighter as Deho continued his repairs. It would explain why you can interface with our technology, Why your touch awakens systems that have been dormant for centuries. The clinic doors burst open, admitting Station Commander Taemin Song and 2 security officers. Taemin was a stern man in his 50s, someone who'd earned his position through competence rather than politics. Dr. Park, we detected massive energy readings from your clinic. What's going on here? His question died as he took in the sight of Veltar. Commander Song, Daeho said carefully. Meet Veltar. He's the last of the Draconian warriors. Taemin's hand moved instinctively to his sidearm, then stopped as he saw Buddy calmly resting against the great creature's neck. If the dog wasn't threatened, maybe? Draconian warriors are myths, Taemin said, but his voice lacked conviction. The Galactic Council will want to study him, one of the security officers said. A living specimen of an unknown species. I'm not a specimen. Veltar's voice carried the weight of ancient authority. I am a guardian, and I bring warning of a threat that will consume all you know if it is not stopped. Taemin studied the scene. Daeho working with obvious expertise on biotechnology that shouldn't exist, G1 scanner readings that defied conventional understanding, and the massive dragon-like being who spoke with the gravity of someone who had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations. Explain, he said simply. As Veltar began to tell them about the Void Swarm, about the coming darkness that would devour worlds, Daeho felt something shift in the biomechanical interface under his hands. For just a moment, he saw flashes of vision, vast fleets of living ships, stars going dark one by one, and somewhere in the void, something hungry and patient waiting for the right moment to feed. Commander, Daeho said quietly, I think we need to contact the Galactic Council, but not to study Veltar, to warn them. Outside the clinic, Buddy lifted his head and whined softly, his sensitive ears detecting something that wouldn't be picked up by their scanners for several more hours. The subtle gravitational distortions that indicated something large was approaching Kepler 442. Something that traveled in formation, something official. The Galactic Council had already heard about their discovery, and they were coming. The Galactic Council's diplomatic vessel Concordia arrived at Kepler 442 with a full escort of military ships, turning the quiet mining station into a bustling hub of interstellar politics overnight. Ambassador Sulven, a tall, crystalline being from the Thek Collective, led the delegation with the cold efficiency that had made the Thek the galaxy's premier administrators. Commander Song, Sulven's translated voice carried no emotion. You were correct to contact the Council about this discovery. However, we must insist on immediate custody of the creature for proper study and classification. Daeho stood protectively, near Veltar's biopod, where the warrior was receiving treatment in G1's expanded medical bay. The repairs to his biomechanical systems were complex, requiring hours of delicate work that only Daeho seemed capable of performing. With respect, Ambassador, Daeho said, Veltar isn't a creature to be studied. He's a sentient being with critical information about a threat to the entire galaxy. The Galactic Council will determine the validity of any threats, Sulven replied. Our xenobiologists require immediate access to study this specimen's biomechanical integration. Such technology could revolutionize our understanding of cybernetic enhancement. Veltar's eyes opened, fixing on the ambassador with ancient dignity. I have seen the rise and fall of a dozen civilizations, Sulven of the Thek. I remember when your people first achieved faster-than-light travel and begged the Draconian warriors for protection from the void dwellers of the Andaris Nebula. Sulven's crystalline form flickered with what might have been surprise. Impossible. Those records are classified at the highest levels. Your people carved the history of that first contact into the living crystal of your homeworld's sacred mountain, Veltar continued. The inscription reads, Today we learned we are not alone in our struggle against the dark. Do you doubt me now? The silence that followed was broken by young communications officer Hee-Jin Choi, who had been quietly working at a translation terminal. Ambassador, I've been analyzing the linguistic patterns in Veltar's speech. The grammatical structures match fragments of text found in archaeological sites across 7 different star systems, sites that predate recorded galactic civilization. Hee-Jin was barely 25, fresh from the academy, but her gift for languages had already earned her a posting to the Council's diplomatic corps. Her findings added credibility to Veltar's claims that couldn't be easily dismissed. Even if this being is what he claims, Sulven said, the proper course is still scientific study. These biomechanical systems represent technology that could benefit all species in the galaxy. The technology will benefit no one if the Void Swarm returns, Veltar said, his voice carrying exhausted frustration. Even now it stirs in the deep void. My failing sensors detected its movements before my ship crashed here. Deho looked up from the biomechanical interface he was repairing. What would it take to convince you? What kind of proof would the Council accept? Sulven's form shifted, the equivalent of a shrug. Tangible evidence, verifiable data. Something beyond the claims of a single alien being, however historically accurate his knowledge might be. That's when Buddy began to bark. The dog's urgent warning sent everyone in the medical bay scrambling for their scanners. What they found chilled them all. 3 outer rim colonies had just gone completely dark. No distress signals, no evacuation. Notices. One moment they were there, the next, nothing but empty space where entire worlds had been. Sensor malfunction, one of Sulven's aides said quickly. It has to be, but Hyojin was already pulling up historical records, cross-referencing the pattern of the disappeared colonies with ancient texts she'd been translating. Ambassador, look at this. The pattern matches historical records from Draconian archives. 3 worlds positioned in a triangular formation, disappearing simultaneously. It's exactly how the ancient texts describe the Void Swarm's hunting behavior. Sulven's crystalline form began to pulse with what might have been anxiety. Even if this correlation is valid, we cannot simply... Alarms throughout the station began blaring. Commander Taemin's voice crackled over the intercom. All personnel to emergency stations. Long-range sensors are detecting massive gravitational anomalies approaching the outer system. Unknown contacts, moving at impossible speeds. Veltar struggled to rise from his biopod, his partially repaired systems flickering with desperate energy. It's too late, they've found me. The Void Swarm can track draconian biosignatures across vast distances. They know I'm here. How long do we have? Deho asked, his hands already moving to complete the emergency repairs on Veltar's most critical systems. Hours, perhaps less. Veltar's eyes met Deho's with desperate intensity. There is one chance. In my ship's core, there is an emergency protocol. If you can interface with the ship's heart system, you might be able to awaken the Stormbreaker. What's the Stormbreaker? My ship's true form. Every draconian vessel is more than it appears. The Stormbreaker is a living ship, a biomechanical entity capable of standing against the Void Swarm. But it requires a perfect harmonic interface to awaken, something only a draconian should be able to provide. Deho looked at his hands, still glowing faintly from contact with the biomechanical interfaces. But I might be able to do it. The process will kill you if you're not truly compatible, Veltar warned. The bioship's consciousness is vast, alien. A human mind could be lost forever in the interface. Buddy whined softly and pushed his nose against Deho's hand. The dog's brown eyes held that particular intelligence that seemed to understand exactly what was at stake. I have to try, Deho said. If the Void Swarm is really coming, we need every advantage we can get. As if summoned by his words, the station shuddered under the impact of something vast and hungry, testing their defenses. In the distance, the first of the Void Swarm's scouts had arrived, and they were broadcasting a message that chilled everyone who heard it. Draconian life sign detected. Biomass will be harvested. Resistance will be absorbed. Compliance ensures minimal suffering. The last guardian of the galaxy was about to face his greatest test, aided by a human mechanic whose ancestry held secrets that neither species fully understood, and a loyal dog whose simple courage might be the key to saving them all. The crash site of Veltar's ship had become a hive of desperate activity. While the Galactic Council's forces established defensive positions around Kepler 442, Deho worked frantically to access the ship's core systems. The biomechanical vessel, had embedded itself deep into the station's superstructure during the crash, its living hull slowly integrating with the mining platform's infrastructure. The heart system is 3 levels down, Veltar explained, his voice weak but determined, as G1 monitored his vital signs from a mobile medical unit. But Daeho, you must understand what you're attempting has never been done. The trial of resonance was designed for draconian physiology. Your neural patterns, your bioelectric field, everything is different. Daeho descended into the ship's core, following bioluminescent pathways that pulsed like arteries through the vessel's interior. Buddy stayed close, his presence somehow calming the ship's agitated systems. The walls around them were clearly alive, breathing, responding to their footsteps with gentle ripples of color and warmth. Above them, the Void Swarm's main force was approaching. The scouts had been probing the station's defenses for hours, testing weak points with tendrils of corrupted biotechnology that tried to infect and subvert any system they touched. Commander Taemin's defense forces were holding, but barely. Daeho, Hyejin's voice crackled through his comm unit. I've been analyzing the Void Swarm's transmissions. They're not just attacking randomly. They're trying to locate something specific, something they call the last song. What's the last song? Daeho asked, pausing at a junction where 3 biomechanical passages converged. The ship seemed to be guiding him toward the center, but the path was becoming more complex, more organic. Veltar's voice was barely a whisper through the comm. The heart song of each draconian ship. It's what gives them consciousness, identity. If the Void Swarm can corrupt the Stormbreaker's song, they can turn my ship into one of their own. The implications hit Daeho like a physical blow. If the Stormbreaker fell to corruption, the Void Swarm would gain not just another weapon, but the knowledge contained in one of the last pure draconian vessels. They would learn the locations of other survivors, other hidden technologies, other worlds to consume. Then we don't let that happen, Daeho said grimly, pressing deeper into the ship's core. The heart chamber was a cathedral of living technology. Biomechanical interfaces covered every surface, pulsing with the slow rhythm of a sleeping giant's heartbeat. At the center, suspended in a web of energy and organic conduits, was the ship's consciousness core, a crystalline structure that seemed to contain entire galaxies of swirling light. Beautiful, Daeho breathed, approaching the central interface with reverent steps. Buddy whined softly, pressing against Daeho's leg. The dog's instincts were clearly warning of danger, but there was something else in his posture, a readiness to face whatever came as long as they faced it together. I know, boy. I'm scared too. Daeho placed his hand on the primary interface, feeling the ship's consciousness brush against his mind like the whisper of solar winds across distant worlds. The trial of resonance began with a flood of sensation that nearly overwhelmed Daeho's human consciousness. The ship's awareness was vast, ancient, filled with memories of battles fought across the galaxy and civilizations protected or mourned. For a terrifying moment, Daeho felt himself dissolving into that immensity. Then Buddy barked. The simple, loyal sound anchored Daeho to his own identity. He was a mechanic from Kepler 442, a human who fixed things that others couldn't, someone who believed that every broken system could be repaired if you just understood how it worked. The ship's consciousness recognized something in that clarity of purpose, something that resonated with its own deepest programming. You are not draconian. The Stormbreaker's voice spoke directly into Daeho's mind, carrying harmonics of surprise and hope. Yet you touch our systems as if born to them. What are you, small consciousness? I'm someone who helps, Daeho replied, his awareness expanding to encompass the ship's biomechanical systems. I fix things. I make them work again. And right, now you need to work again. The corruption spreads. I feel my brothers falling to the dark song one by one. Soon I too will be consumed unless we fight back together, Daeho finished. He could sense the Void Swarm's influence pressing against the ship's defenses, trying to corrupt the biomechanical systems with whispers of despair and surrender. But I can't do this alone. I need help. The small four-legged one, its mind song, is pure, without guile or fear. Through it, you maintain your center, Buddy's presence in the link was like a warm beacon, his simple loyalty and courage providing stability that allowed Daeho to interface more deeply with the ship's systems. Together, the three consciousnesses, human ingenuity, canine loyalty, and ancient draconian purpose, began to harmonize. The Stormbreaker awakened. The transformation was magnificent and terrifying. The crashed ship's hull began to shift and flow, reconfiguring itself from a broken wreck into something that was part vessel, part living creature. Biomechanical wings unfurled from the station's superstructure as the ship freed itself from the mining platform, its consciousness fully integrated with Daeho's understanding of complex systems and Buddy's emotional stability. In the medical bay, Veltar's biomechanical implants suddenly blazed with renewed power as the ship's awakening sent healing energy through his systems. "Impossible," he breathed, his voice stronger than it had been since the crash. The Stormbreaker has not just awakened, it has evolved. Ambassador Sulven's crystalline form was pulsing with what could only be described as awe. The energy. Readings are off the scale. What exactly has your mechanic accomplished? He's done what no Draconian has done in 1,000 years, Veltar replied, rising from his medical pod with renewed strength. He's created a new kind of harmony between species. The Stormbreaker is no longer purely Draconian. It's something new, something that combines the best of both our peoples. On the ship's bridge, which had reconfigured itself around Daeho's position, the young mechanic found himself interfacing with systems that responded to his thoughts as if they were extensions of his own body. Buddy sat beside the command throne, his presence maintaining the emotional balance that kept the bioship stable. Through the ship's sensors, Daeho could see the approaching void swarm, a vast collection of corrupted bioships and twisted mechanical constructs that devoured light itself as they moved. At their center was something that made his blood run cold, a massive vessel that looked like a corrupted version of the Stormbreaker. "Veltar," Daeho's voice carried through the ship's communication systems. "There's something out there. Something that looks like a Draconian ship, but wrong." Veltar's silence stretched long enough that Daeho worried the connection had been lost. When the warrior finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of ultimate sorrow. "That is Shadow Maw, ship of my brother warrior Kethvos. The void swarm took him 50 cycles ago. If they have corrupted his heart song," Veltar's voice broke, "he was the greatest of us. If his ship has become their commander vessel, then the swarm's power has grown beyond our worst fears." Daeho felt the Stormbreaker's consciousness recoil from the approaching corruption, but he also sensed something else, a determination that matched his own stubborn refusal to accept that any broken thing couldn't be fixed. "Maybe," Daeho said quietly, his hands moving across biomechanical interfaces that responded like old friends. "It's time to show the galaxy what humans do best." "And what is that?" Sulven asked through the comm. Daeho smiled, a mechanic's confident grin in the face of the impossible. "We fix things that everyone else says are broken beyond repair." The battle for the soul of the galaxy was about to begin, and at its heart would be the strangest alliance ever forged. A human mechanic, his loyal dog, and the last free Draconian warrior, working together in a living ship that had become something entirely new. The news from the Outer Rim was catastrophic. In the 12 hours since the Stormbreaker had awakened, 7 more star systems had gone dark. The void swarm wasn't just advancing, it was accelerating, consuming entire sectors of space with an efficiency that terrified even the Galactic Council's most seasoned military leaders. Aboard the Stormbreaker, now serving as the flagship of an unlikely alliance between human ingenuity and Draconian technology, Daeho studied the tactical displays. With growing dread, the bioship's sensors painted a picture of systematic devastation that spoke to a terrifying intelligence behind the swarm's movements. "They're not just consuming randomly," he observed, his consciousness partially merged with the ship's tactical systems. "Look at the pattern. They're isolating specific worlds, cutting off escape routes, herding populations into concentrated areas before feeding," Veltar finished grimly. The warrior had taken position at a secondary command interface, his biomechanical implants now fully integrated with the Stormbreaker's systems. The harmony between human intuition and draconian experience was proving more effective than either species had achieved alone. Buddy lay near the command throne, his presence serving as an emotional anchor that kept the bioship's complex consciousness stable during the stress of coordination with dozens of other vessels. The dog had become an essential part of their operational effectiveness, his simple loyalty providing the emotional balance needed to maintain the human-draconian interface. Admiral Chen reports the Third Fleet has lost contact with their advance. Scouts, Hyajin announced from her communication station. The young officer had volunteered to serve aboard the Stormbreaker, her linguistic skills proving invaluable in coordinating with the various species now rallying to face the Void Swarm. That's 3 entire battle groups that have simply vanished. Commander Tae Min, now serving as liaison between the Stormbreaker and the conventional forces, shook his head in frustrated disbelief. Our weapons are useless against them. Every time we destroy one of their vessels, it just reforms. The wreckage becomes part of the next wave. Because you're fighting the symptoms, not the disease, Veltar explained. The Void Swarm isn't just a collection of ships. It's a corrupted consciousness that inhabits and transforms whatever technology it encounters. Destroying the physical vessels only feeds more raw material to the core intelligence. Daeho's awareness expanded through the Stormbreaker's sensor network, reaching out across vast distances to touch the edges of the approaching darkness. What he found there made him shudder. Not just malevolent intelligence, but familiar resonances twisted into something hungry and patient. Veltar, you said there were other surviving draconian warriors scattered across the galaxy. If we could, find them, wake them up like we did the Stormbreaker. A desperate hope, the warrior replied, but his biomechanical systems pulsed brighter with renewed possibility. If any still live, they would be in stasis, their bioships dormant too. Avoid detection by the swarm, but finding them, Veltar's consciousness merged more deeply with the ship's navigation systems. Yes, there are resonance traces, faint, scattered across impossible distances but detectable. The Stormbreaker's consciousness added its vast processing power to the search, and 3 distinct signals emerged from the cosmic background noise. 3 more draconian warriors, exactly as Veltar had hoped. Cathara sleeps in the ice moon of Valdris Prime, Veltar announced, his voice carrying wonder and desperate hope. Zulmoth drifts powerless in the nebula of lost stars, and Orindar, the warrior's biomechanical systems flickered with something like concern. Orindar's signal comes from the slave markets of Kepler's Edge. Pirates have him, though they likely don't understand what they possess. 3 rescue missions, Daeho mused, his mind already calculating the logistics. But the Void Swarm won't give us time to get them all. We'll have to split up. Impossible, Ambassador Sulven interjected from his position at the diplomatic seal station. The Stormbreaker is our only effective weapon against the swarm. We cannot risk it on rescue missions when entire worlds are falling. The ambassador's right about the risk, Daeho admitted, but wrong about the solution. We don't need the Stormbreaker to rescue the other warriors. We need the other warriors to multiply the Stormbreaker's effectiveness. He turned to face the assembled crew, human and alien alike. Every draconian warrior we wake up gives us another living ship, another consciousness that can stand against the Void Swarm's corruption. But more than that, each rescue teaches us more about how the biotechnology works, how the harmony between species can be strengthened. Buddy lifted his head and barked once, his tail wagging with what seemed like approval. The dog's simple confidence in Daeho's judgment had become a touchstone for the entire crew. The first rescue will be the hardest, Veltar warned. Cathara has been in stasis for over 2 centuries. Her bioship Frostbane was designed for deep cold operations, but if her systems have deteriorated, then I fix them, Daeho said, simply. That's what I do. The journey to Valdris Prime took 18 hours at the Stormbreaker's maximum sustainable velocity. As they traveled, the bioship's consciousness worked with Daeho to understand the modifications that would be needed to wake a warrior who had been sleeping since before Earth had achieved spaceflight. They found Cathara exactly where Veltar's memories had suggested, entombed in ice at the heart of a mining operation that had been abandoned for decades. Her bioship was a magnificent creation, smaller than the Stormbreaker, but perfectly adapted for its frozen environment. Ice-blue biomechanical systems ran through the ship's hull like veins, and even in dormancy, there was something beautiful and terrible about its sleeping power. "She's alive," Deho confirmed after interfacing with the ship's external sensors, but barely. The biosystems are running on minimum power, just enough to maintain her life functions. The awakening process was more complex than they had hoped. Kethara's consciousness had been dormant so long that it took the combined efforts of Deho's technical skills, Veltar's experience, and even Buddy's emotional support to gently coax her back to awareness. When the warrior finally opened her eyes, they blazed with the cold fire of distant stars. "Brother," she whispered to Veltar, her voice carrying the crystalline beauty of winter winds. "I dreamed of ice and silence. How long?" 2 centuries, sister," Veltar replied gently. "The galaxy has changed. Our people are gone. But hope remains." Kethara's gaze fixed on Deho with curiosity rather than suspicion. "You are not draconian, yet you wake the sleeping ships. How is this possible?" "We're still figuring that out," Deho admitted, his hands working to complete the integration between Frostbane and the Stormbreaker's systems. "Right now, we need your help. There's something coming that threatens everything, the awakening." Of Frostbane created a resonance between the 2 bioships that was immediately apparent. Where the Stormbreaker was warm, adaptive, and nurturing, Frostbane was precise, analytical, and devastatingly efficient. Together, they created a harmony that neither could achieve alone. But even as they celebrated this victory, urgent communications from the fleet brought sobering news. The Void Swarm had accelerated its advance, consuming 2 more sectors while they had been focused on the rescue. They were running out of time. The second rescue was a race against an encroaching Void Swarm tendril that had detected their activities. Zulmoth's bioship Void Hunter was found drifting in the nebula of lost stars, its systems powered down to the point where it was nearly indistinguishable from space debris. The warrior had been wounded in his final battle against the swarm, and his ship's consciousness had entered a protective hibernation to keep them both alive. "His dreams are filled with darkness," Kethara observed as she and Deho worked together to revive the sleeping warrior. Her ice-cold precision complemented his intuitive understanding of the biomechanical systems. The Void Swarm touched his mind before he escaped. There may be complications. When Zulmoth awakened, his first act was to try to destroy everything around him, convinced that he was still fighting the swarm. It took the combined efforts of all 3 awakened warriors, plus Buddy's calming presence, to convince him that he was among friends. "Forgive me," Zulmoth said once his panic subsided, his dark scales rippling with bioluminescent patterns of shame. "The Void Swarm's touch. It leaves scars that do not heal. I see corruption in every shadow." But Void Hunter's awakening brought new capabilities to their small fleet. Where the Stormbreaker was adaptive and Frostbane was precise, Void Hunter was designed for stealth and striking from unexpected angles. Its biomechanical systems could bend light and energy around it, making it nearly invisible to conventional sensors. The third rescue proved the most complex. Orindar was indeed in the hands of slavers, specifically the notorious Captain Vexhai, a Quarian pirate who specialized in collecting exotic specimens for wealthy collectors across the galaxy. The slavers had no idea they possessed a draconian warrior. To them, Orindar was simply an unusual reptilian alien in an elaborate mechanical suit. "We could attack directly," Zulmoth suggested, Void Hunter's stealth systems already analyzing the pirate station's defenses. "My ship could strike before they know we're—" "That risks Orindar's life," Kethara pointed out, Frostbane's analytical systems running thousands of tactical scenarios. "The pirates might kill him rather than lose their prize." Deho studied the problem from his position aboard the Stormbreaker, Buddy's presence helping him think through the complex variables. What if we don't fight them at all? What if we buy him? The solution was elegantly simple. Using the Stormbreaker's biomechanical fabrication systems, They created a collection of technological samples that would be irresistible to pirates, advanced components that appeared valuable but contained hidden biomechanical interfaces that only Deho could activate. "You want to trade fake technology for a priceless warrior?" Sullivan asked, his crystalline form flickering with what might have been amusement. "Not fake," Deho corrected. "Dormant. The technology is real, but it won't work for anyone except us. If they honor the trade, they get impressive but useless decorations. If they try to double-cross us..." He smiled. "Well, that's when Zalmoth's stealth capabilities become relevant." The exchange took place at a neutral station in the frontier. Prim Captain Vexhai was a typical Quarian pirate, large, aggressive, and just intelligent enough to be dangerous. His exotic specimen was kept in a stasis cage that prevented any movement or communication. Magnificent creature, Vexhai boasted, not realizing that his specimen was listening to every word with growing anger. Completely docile, perfect, for display. The biomechanical components appear to be decorative rather than functional. Deho had to restrain himself from correcting the pirate's ignorance. Orindar was not docile. He was conserving energy, waiting for the right moment. When the trade was completed and the stasis cage was opened, the fourth draconian warrior emerged with the controlled fury of a hurricane-given form. "You dare treat a guardian of the stars like a trinket for display?" Orindar's voice carried harmonics that made the station's hull ring like a bell. His biomechanical systems blazed with golden fire as he assessed the situation. "Brother Veltar, please tell me we may now educate these pirates about proper respect for ancient powers." "Actually," Deho said, stepping between the enraged warrior and the suddenly very nervous pirates, "we have bigger problems. Buddy's been tracking Void Swarm movements and they've figured out what we're doing." The dog's simple but effective early warning system had detected the gravitational anomalies that preceded a swarm attack. The corruption was coming, drawn, by the awakening of so many draconian biosignatures in close proximity. "How long?" Cathara asked, Frostbane already beginning evasive maneuvers. "Minutes," Deho replied, his consciousness expanding to coordinate all 4 bioships. "They've been tracking us. Every warrior we've awakened has made us stronger but also more visible to them." Orindar's ship, Goldenfire, burst free from the pirate station's docking clamps, its biomechanical systems interfacing seamlessly with the other 3 vessels. Where the Stormbreaker was adaptive, Frostbane precise, and Voidhunter stealthy, Goldenfire was pure offensive power, a weapon designed to stand against the darkness and hold the line no matter the odds. 4 ships, Veltar observed as they formed up for their escape from the frontier rim. 4 warriors awakened, but the Void Swarm approaches with hundreds of corrupted vessels. "Then it's time to even the odds," Deho said, his awareness now spanning all 4 bioships simultaneously. Buddy's presence kept him anchored to his human identity, while the vast consciousnesses of the draconian vessels expanded his understanding of what was possible. "What do you propose?" Orindar asked, his warrior's instincts already anticipating. The answer? Deho's smile was the confident grin of a mechanic who had just figured out how to fix the biggest, most complex system he'd ever encountered. "We're going to do something the Void Swarm isn't expecting. Instead of running from them, we're going to give them exactly what they want." "Which is?" Sullivan asked, though his crystalline form was already pulsing with the rhythm of someone who suspected the answer would be both brilliant and terrifying. "Us," Deho said simply. "They want to corrupt draconian biotechnology? Fine. Let's see how they handle 4 awakened bioships working in perfect harmony with human ingenuity, and 1 very brave dog." The final confrontation was approaching, and at its heart would be a test of whether corruption could overcome the bonds of loyalty, friendship, and the simple human belief that anything broken could be fixed, even the galaxy itself. The Void. Swarm's main fleet emerged from hyperspace like a plague made manifest. Hundreds of corrupted bioships, their once beautiful forms twisted into nightmarish amalgamations of flesh and dark metal, moved with the coordinated precision of a single, malevolent will. At their center, Shadowmaw led the formation, Kethvas's corrupted vessel now serving as the Swarm's command ship. its original beauty perverted into something that hurt to look upon. The Galactic Council's combined fleets had taken position around the core worlds, but their conventional weapons were proving useless against an enemy that absorbed and corrupted everything it touched. Admiral Chen's flagship sent desperate communications as entire battle groups simply stopped responding. Their crews converted to serve the swarm's hunger. "They're not just destroying our ships," Commander Taemin reported from his position aboard the Stormbreaker. "They're turning them against us. Every vessel we lose becomes part of their fleet." Daeho stood at the center of the 4 bioships' shared consciousness. His awareness expanded across a network that spanned light years. Beside him, Buddy maintained his position as the emotional anchor that kept the vast intelligence stable and focused. The dog's simple loyalty had become the foundation upon which 4 ancient warriors and 1 human mechanic built their unity. "Yarius, Swarm seeks to corrupt us," Veltar observed, his consciousness melding with the Stormbreaker's tactical systems. "It believes that biomechanical technology can only serve destruction once it has been touched by the void." "It's wrong," Daeho said quietly, his hands moving across interfaces that responded to his thoughts like extensions of his own nervous system. "I've been studying the corruption patterns. The Void Swarm isn't evil by choice, it's broken. The original biotechnology was designed to nurture life, to protect and heal. Something went wrong, turned that programming inside out." Cathara's ice-cold analytical mind processed the implications. "You believe the swarm can be repaired?" "Everything can be repaired if you understand how it works," Daeho replied, his consciousness diving deeper into the biomechanical networks. "But to fix something this complex, this damaged, I need to get close enough to understand the corruption at its source." "That's suicide," Orandar protested, Goldenfire's weapon systems charging in anticipation of battle. "The swarm will consume you the moment you approach Shadowmaw." "Not if I don't fight them," Daeho said, his plan crystallizing with the clarity of a mechanic who had finally understood the nature of the problem. "What if instead of resisting the corruption, I let it try to corrupt me? What if I use that connection to trace the damage back to its source?" The silence that followed was filled with the weight of an impossible decision. What Daeho was proposing went against every instinct, every tactical doctrine, every survival protocol any of them knew. "The risk is too great." Sylvan's translated voice carried uncharacteristic emotion. "If the corruption takes you, we lose not only our most effective asset but potentially hand the swarm the key to corrupting all biomechanical technology. And if we don't try, the galaxy falls anyway," Daeho pointed out. "The swarm is getting stronger with every world it consumes. Soon even the 4 bioships won't be enough to stand against it." Buddy whined softly and pushed his nose against Daeho's hand. The dog's brown eyes held that particular intelligence that seemed to understand exactly what was being asked and what needed to be done. "You won't be alone," Zulmoth said quietly, his scarred consciousness adding its strength to the shared network. "If you go into the dark, we go with you, all of us. The bioship's consciousness working together might be able to protect your mind during the interface," Cathara added, her analytical systems already calculating the probability matrices. "But the margin for error is minimal." Veltar's ancient voice carried the weight of ultimate decision. "In all our history, no guardian has attempted what you propose, to touch the corruption voluntarily, to seek healing rather than destruction. It is either the greatest folly or the greatest wisdom our species has ever contemplated. The choice was made when the Void Swarm's advanced scouts reached the outer defensive perimeter. The corrupted bioships moved through the Council's fleet, like death-given form, converting entire battle groups in minutes. Soon they would reach the core worlds and billions would die. "All ships, this is the Stormbreaker," Daeho broadcast on all frequencies. "We're going in alone. Do not follow. Do not interfere. If this doesn't work—" He paused, looking down at Buddy's trusting face. "If this doesn't work, remember that. Sometimes the greatest victories look like defeats until the very end." The 4 bioships moved as one toward the heart of the Void Swarm, their biomechanical systems synchronized in perfect harmony. As they approached Shadowmaw, the corrupted vessel's response was immediate. Tendrils of dark energy reached out to envelop them, seeking to add their power to the swarm's collective hunger. Instead of resisting, Daeho opened the Stormbreaker's systems to the corruption, allowing it to flow through the biomechanical networks while he traced its path with his expanded consciousness. The experience was agony. Not physical pain, but the spiritual torture of feeling hope twisted into despair, love perverted into hunger, the desire to protect corrupted into the need to consume. But beneath the corruption, Daeho found what he was looking for. The original programming buried under centuries of twisted code and malevolent adaptation. The biotechnology had once been beautiful, a network designed to nurture life across the galaxy, to heal wounded worlds and protect emerging civilizations. "I can see it," he whispered, his voice carrying across the shared consciousness of all 4 bioships. The original purpose. It's still there, just lost, confused. Working with the delicate precision of a surgeon removing a malignant tumor, Daeho began to carefully separate the corrupted code from the underlying biomechanical consciousness. It was impossibly complex work that required not just technical skill, but an understanding of the emotional resonances that drove biomechanical systems. That's when Buddy proved his true worth. The dog's simple, pure emotional signature served as a template for what the original consciousness had been: protective, loyal, nurturing, brave. Using Buddy's emotional patterns as a guide, Daeho began to restore the corrupted code to its original purpose. The process sent shockwaves through the entire Void Swarm. Ships that had been moving in perfect coordination suddenly faltered as their biomechanical systems remembered what they were supposed to be protecting instead of consuming. The corruption began to unravel, not through destruction but through healing. Shadowmaw convulsed as the consciousness of Kethvos began to reassert itself, fighting against centuries of corrupted programming. Through the biomechanical link, Daeho could feel the ancient warrior's struggle to reclaim his identity from the darkness that had consumed him. "Brother," Veltar's voice reached across the void. "Come home." The transformation was visible across the entire battlefield. Corrupted bioships began to shed their twisted modifications, their hulls flowing back into the beautiful organic curves they had originally possessed. The malevolent intelligence that had driven the Void Swarm fractured and dissolved as its constituent parts remembered their true purpose, but the greatest change was in the network itself. The healed biotechnology didn't simply return to its original state. It evolved, incorporating the lessons learned from human ingenuity and the emotional stability provided by simple, honest friendship. The Guardian network that emerged was stronger, more adaptable, and more nurturing than its predecessors. Across the galaxy, the transformation continued. Dead worlds touched by the swarm's corruption began to bloom with new life as the Guardian network's healing influence spread. Damaged ecosystems were restored, poisoned atmospheres were cleansed, and the wounds left by centuries of conflict began to heal. "Impossible," Sulven breathed, his crystalline form pulsing with patterns of wonder. The energy readings indicate that the biotechnology is now self-improving, evolving to meet the needs of every world it touches. Daeho found himself back in his own consciousness, still linked to the bioships but no longer drowning in their vast awareness. Buddy was licking his face with the enthusiasm of a dog who had just saved the galaxy and wanted everyone to know. "How do you feel?" Jiwan asked, running medical scans to ensure that the interface hadn't damaged his human neural patterns. "Like a mechanic who just fixed the biggest, most complicated system in the galaxy," Daeho replied, grinning as he scratched behind Buddy's ears. "And like maybe we've all learned something important about what's possible when different species work together." Kethvos approached in his restored form, the ancient warrior's scales now gleaming with their original silver brilliance instead of the corrupted darkness they had worn as Shadowmaw. "Human friend Daeho," he said, his voice carrying harmonics of profound gratitude. "You have given me back not just my life but my purpose. How can this be repaid?" "By helping us figure out what comes next," Daeho said, looking out at the transformed galaxy where the Guardian network was already beginning its work of healing and protection. "We've got a lot of rebuilding to do, and I think it's going to take all of us working together." The Galactic Council's records would later describe the Battle of the Core Worlds, as the most significant event in recorded galactic history. But the truly stunning part wasn't the military victory. It was what came after. The Guardian Network didn't establish dominance over the galaxy. Instead, it offered partnership, sharing biomechanical healing technology with any species willing to use it for nurturing rather than conquest. Worlds that had been enemies for millennia found themselves working together to restore damaged ecosystems and protect emerging civilizations. Deho returned to Kepler 442, but his small repair shop had become something much larger, a training center where representatives from hundreds of species came to learn the principles of biomechanical harmony. The key lesson was always the same. The greatest technology was compassion. The strongest systems were built on trust, and sometimes the most important innovations came from the most unexpected partnerships. Buddy, now recognized across the galaxy as the heart of the bond, spent his days greeting visitors with the same enthusiasm he'd always shown. To him, saving the galaxy was just another day's work for a good dog with a good human. And in the deep archives of the Stormbreaker, now serving as the Guardian Network's central coordination node, Veltar maintained the records of what had been learned, that healing was always more powerful than destruction, that every broken system could be repaired if you understood how it worked, and that sometimes the greatest wisdom came from the smallest, most loyal hearts. The galaxy had been stunned not by humanity's capacity for war, but by their gift for fixing things that others considered irreparably broken, including themselves.